Welcome back to Essential Cocktails, everybody. I'm Dan Fellows, and today I'm going to show you a really refreshing raspberry-based gin cocktail, which has sweet and sour elements and is just an absolute winner. It's called a Clover Club. Alright, so the Clover Club was created in the early 1900s and it was actually named after a really popular club which went by the same name, the Clover Club. And this has some pretty interesting ingredients. We've got raspberry in there, we've also got gin in there, which is going to be our base spirit. But interestingly, we have a little bit of dry vermouth in here. So just going to grab this from my fridge. And this actually lightens the whole drink down, slightly reduces the ABV, especially if you can compare it to something like a White Lady, which used Cointreau, as well as gin. So that was quite a high ABV. This one's a little bit less intense. The vermouth just brings a kind of maltiness, a little bit of roundness to the drink, whereas obviously Cointreau is quite a big old orange flavour. As with a lot of our sweet and sour recipes, we're going to go with lemon juice, balanced out by a little bit of white sugar syrup. I'm going with Monin cane sugar syrup, which is a 2-to-1 ratio. And again, we're making this into quite a sort of foamy drink, a little bit creamy, and you can either do this with an egg white, which is one option, or you can do it with aquafaba, which is the water from a can of chickpeas, which is what we're going to do today. So these are our kind of key liquid ingredients, but we also have one more ingredient, which brings a real nice, delicate sweetness and fruitiness to the drink, which is going to be raspberries. And we're going to muddle these in the bottom of our shaker tin. But if they're kind of soft raspberries, you probably don't need to muddle them because they're going to get really knocked around when they get shaken up. So in our tin, because we're going to shake this drink, because we have citrus in here, I'm going to add 10 mils of our sugar syrup to our 5 raspberries. And if you want to get a more raspberry kind of forward flavor, obviously add more raspberries. If you want it to be more delicate and less fruity, obviously add less. But 5 raspberries here is a pretty good starting point, and I think this gives enough of the flavor that it kind of comes through without overpowering the drink. So just going to give this a light press with our muddler, just to release the raspberry juice into the syrup. And some recipes actually call for a raspberry syrup, but essentially what we're doing here is making a raspberry syrup in the base of our shaker. Now we're going to build the rest of the drink, which is going to be 40 mils of gin. And you can use a London dry gin here. You could use a Plymouth gin, which would work really nicely because it's a little bit more kind of sweet and fruit forward. But whichever gin you have is going to work really nicely. And we're complementing this with 20 mils of a dry vermouth, or an extra dry vermouth, or a blanco vermouth. Obviously these all have slightly different sweetnesses and different characteristics. But again, whichever one you have is going to work really nicely. As with lots of our sweet and sour drinks, we're going to go 20 mils of freshly squeezed lemon juice to bring our acidity and a bit of zestiness to the drink, followed by 10 mils of our 2-to-1 sugar syrup. And this is nice to be a kind of white sugar syrup or a cane sugar syrup. I think a brown sugar syrup is going to overwhelm the drink, and brown sugar and raspberries perhaps aren't a great combination, and particularly with gin, you want it to be light and very clean flavored. We're going to go 15 mils of our aquafaba just to bring our nice foaminess, but if you're using an egg white, just use 1 egg white. And then we have one more optional ingredient, which actually I do recommend. So onto a set of scales, just going to add our tin. And I like to add around about 0.5 grams of a saline solution, made with 1 part salt, 5 parts water. And this has an interesting effect on the drink. So if it's not here, it's kind of wide, kind of sweet and sour, but just adding a little bit of salt just brings it all together, almost makes the drink a little bit malty, and it ties in with the vermouth in particular really nicely, just to lighten the drink and add just something a little bit more kind of round and warming to the drink, whereas otherwise it's kind of bright, vibrant, sweet and sour. Give this a really hard single shake over ice if you're just using really kind of fresh ice, but if you're not using fresh ice, you can do a double shake, which I'll show you how to do in this episode. So with this, I've got ice fresh out the freezer, so a single shake will suffice as long as you do a very, very hard shake, like this. So after 10 to 15 seconds, you get a nicely frosted up shaker, which is a really good sign. It means the drink's nice and cold. You can see in the drink, it's got really nice foamy texture already, so we don't need that second shake in there. But if this wasn't completely kind of whipped up and emulsified, just strain it out, do a second shake dry, and you'll get that nice foamy texture. Fine, strain this into a chilled glass, and it has that really nice light pink color and a foamy texture on top of the drink. I like to express a little lemon coin over the drink, just to give it another kind of citric aroma. Just really freshens the whole drink up. You can discard this and then garnish with a raspberry spear. And there we have the raspberry forward gin-based sweet and sour cocktail called a Clover Club. Enjoy.